caring for devotees as the center of developing an intentional community. Very happy to have you today, Acyuta Pryia Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Welcome. And you're based there in Ukraine, which is a yatra that many of us have seen the glories of, at least on Facebook, when we see the big Ukraine festival happening. So maybe, Prabhu, you can tell us a little bit first about how you became connected to Krishna Consciousness, and there in Ukraine, how you developed within the yatra.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Dandavat Pranam. I'm happy to be with you. And it's not so exciting to speak about myself. But anyways, once you're asking, I'll try to serve you in this way. I joined Iscon. I became a devotee in 1980 in Soviet Union, because Ukraine was part of Soviet Union, one of the republics, of 15 republics of Soviet Union. And at that time, it was strictly persecuted, heavily persecuted, and we were more or less underground, practicing ourselves what to speak about preaching. And then communism fell, and we still going on with our Krishna consciousness. I've been part of this yatra from the very beginning, and my service was I was producing books and making books, printing and binding them, everything doing, and then distributing, book distribution, and later on, when we legalized, became legal in this country, I was a temple president for Kiev temple, which is capital of Ukraine, and then I became regional secretary for the Ukraine, and later on, as it's called now, zonal supervisor for the zone Ukraine, Moldova, etc., different areas. And that's a little story.
Wonderful. And within the Ukraine yatra, this feature of devotee care has kind of become a hallmark of your community. Can you describe for us a little bit how that came about, that this became an emphasis in the yatra there?
Yes. In the beginning, from the very beginning, we had very strong preaching spirit, book distribution. I'm not trying to say that now it is down, but what I'm going to say that we distributed a lot of books. We distributed in Ukraine just around 1 million books, which is, considering population of Ukraine, is not so little. But anyways, and we were growing and developing, and from few devotees, like we had 5 devotees in the beginning, and it was growing, but at some point we experienced that this growth somehow blocked, and we're not developing anymore. And I was witnessing that I was feeling maybe something wrong. We're doing something wrong. We're trying to preach, which is fine, which is very good, which is very enlivening, but I felt something lacking here. And after the yatra experienced some problems in 1998, 97, 98, I saw that we're definitely lacking some human element, let us say, in the whole movement in Ukraine, and thus we became more interested, and being a human devotee-oriented community, and we rebuilt our strategies. And after that, we again started developing. And at present, we have about 1,500 practicing, no, 15,000. We have 15,000 practicing devotees. And we have in Ukraine, in our zone, Ukraine and Moldova, 2 states together. And we have also preaching programs going on in about 100 cities. And we have big festivals for 12,000 devotees, for example, before war started in Ukraine, at least. So we're developing, of course, wouldn't say we have no problems. We're still in material world.
Sure. So Ukraine, now that this is fantastic. You said from 5 or 6 to now 15,000. That's quite the miraculous level of growth in just a few years, 2 decades time. When a community begins, what are the seeds of a healthy community development model? For those in other places in the world, they would like to see something like a Ukraine yatra become a reality where they live.
When we're speaking about healthy spiritual community, we need to understand that basically it starts from the top. Top leaders have to be an example of sadhana and selfless service, basically. We have very good GBC Niranjan Maharaj and called GBC Bhaktivibhav Maharaj. So Niranjan Maharaj did a lot. He extended his life. He extended himself to invest a lot of energy in this region, in this zone. And leaders, I mean, besides GBC, leaders have to be socially steady according to their ashrama, and they must have strict sadhana and spiritual purity to preach the same values to other devotees and inspire their faith. And I mean, to build community, we need to be focused on people, because basis of community is not a land. It's not money and not even cows, I would say even that. It is people. And we have to be people-oriented, customer-friendly, and we need to build a nice community, sustainable community. We need to build a network, the whole network of devotee care system. And when we're speaking about devotee care, we're speaking about how it's defined by GBC Devotee Care Committee. We're caring on 4 levels: on spiritual, first of all, and then emotional, social, and physical levels. And all these levels have to be cared for. Devotees have to be cared for on all 4 levels. And that's...
So that brings us to a question about an intentional community, which is usually thought of as something of a planned residential community designed from the start, where everybody's kind of on the same page. And the members of an intentional community, they usually have similar social, political values, of course, spiritual, religious, ideally. So people believe that the success of these communities is connected to resources, assets, techniques. And it sounds like maybe you're speaking to something different. Usually when we think of a community, it's the resource focus, but it sounds like you're focusing more on relationships.
Yeah, that's true. And the word the word community itself implies quite a high level of commonality and unity. And unity, we know unity is spiritual phenomena, like in Srimad Bhagavatam is defined Jnanam Advayam. Advayam means unity. And it's possible only on spiritual basis, because unity is a quality of spiritual energy, and material energy always brings us to duality. So we have to understand that building community means building soul to soul, heart to heart connections and relationships. And lack of such relationships becoming a cause of breakdown of communities. And money could unite, but money could break relationships easily. And ownership of land, of other assets could easily destroy relationships also. And we've seen many examples of failure, and we should make our lessons from that.
So when it's easy to see when you have a nice piece of land. It's easy to see when you have a lot of money. How do you know what is a healthy, wholesome relationship? What are the standards of a strong community relationship dynamic?
Well, strong relationships. First of all, as I said, it starts from the leadership of community, and leaders need to make decision. I'll stay here with these people through thick and thin, through everything, and I will invest my life into these people, into serving these people. And of course, philosophy is there, our practice is there, but leaders should dedicate themselves. And then it becomes impossible. It's quite simple. You have to dedicate just all your life. That's it.
It's that easy.
Yeah. So besides, and besides growing vegetables, grains, and cows, we first need to grow devotees. And I'll give you an example. Like, we have family committee in Kiev, steady grihastas united in family committee and 4 couples, and we're trying to help devotees to find a partner and to counsel them and to create successful marriages. And so far we already created, let's say, that's a decision of devotees, of course, themselves, but we created like 80 families. And it's, you investing in these people, and there must be some Vatsalya ras, with these people, you becoming like a parent for them, because it's usually role of parents to marry their kids. I mean, traditionally, in traditional values in any culture.
Yes.
And so they becoming like your kids, and then they want you name their kids, practically your grandsons, granddaughters, and they turn into you how to follow principles in marriage, how to balance life in marriage with job, giving attention to wife or husband and kids, everything, and you really have a very thick, very strong bonds of connections with them. That's and you basically grow in the whole generation of devotees. Then they would carry your message. You preach them proper things in Krishna consciousness, and they would carry that further to other people, and they becoming leaders of groups of namahatas. You just tell them namahata is a standard for any grihastha. Everybody should become leader of namahat or counselor, and they do it. And they do it, and they're happy because they sheltered, and you're not pushing them so much in terms how to get something from them, but you just investing in them, and they becoming your kids, and they carry a message, and they're happy. No problem.
It sounds something that is almost easier when you have a lot of people, because there's a momentum there with a big group. And so you mentioned you have that 4 couples, and they've helped 80 families come together. What are the principles that a newer yatra or a group of devotees who are not so together yet in their sense of community, what needs to happen for that kind of trust to come into their relationships, so that these kinds of results that you're describing can happen down the road?
Yeah, it takes time. That's why I said you need one life. But I could say that if you're really rebuilding values and directions of preaching in your community, and you start being more focused on people, and create a network of groups of care, of Krishna conscious, association, sadhu sangha, between them, in few years, like 3-4 years, you'll get good results, quite good results. You start with 1, 2, 3 groups. You empower people who can do that. Let them search for their own counselees, preach, go and do some outreach, and you, in few years, you'll feel difference, and then you'll build up natural.
So invest in those that are there, and ask them also to be welcoming for others into the community, and it will kind of take a natural momentum.
Right.
Now, another dynamic, there's the urban, and then there's the rural. There's the devotees that live on the farms, and kind of they're more sheltered, and then there's devotees living in cities. Is there a way that they can harmonize their relationships? Can they support each other, or do they have to remain kind of exclusive?
Yes, definitely. What we do, what we're preaching to people, that to start a rural community, you need first to have strong city community with developed relationships and social mechanism of social care and relationships. That's needed. Otherwise, you'll sink into cow dung. And we saw that many times. So there must be healthy, strong, spiritually city community, and then because we know that Krishna consciousness starts from the cities, and then it moves to rural setting, and then this city community could become a basis for rural development. And then, because to start from the very beginning, start agriculture and community on land, you really need to work hard. You really need to invest spiritual energy into that, a lot of preaching, a lot of money, to a lot of your life. So that's what we do. And then city community and urban community and rural community, they may cooperate, because devotees on the land, they produce something, and temple could become a consumer of that. And that in this way, they can build common economy.
Okay. I like that point about the rural move being one that is a sign of a mature urban community. And until those relationships are there, then the resources aren't going to be utilized in a way that's helpful. In fact, those resources are going to wind up kind of drowning the devotees.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the temple, and it can kind of become a consumer of the products produced in the rural setting. So that's an interesting question also, is that sometimes there might be a conflict of interest, apparently, between ISKCON as an institution, as a religious, and then a community and the business and decisions related to money and finances. So how do you navigate that element of the practical, worldly concerns of families taking care of themselves and the religious institution and its concerns and involvement?
Yeah, it's a big topic. And there must be very clear, strict guidelines from the very beginning of development. And basically, it's interesting that GBC developed a paper and vision of 2 lines of authority existing in ISKCON. And it is nice, actually. It is nice, and that there are 2 lines of authority, one primarily managerial and one primarily spiritual. And that's what we're trying to do. And ISKCON, especially ISKCON clergy, need to be more spiritual oriented and guide and care for people, which means care for people basically, and not to manage devotees, because you can manage only those who are financially dependent, like brahmacharis. You care for them, you supply them shelter, food, cloth, and you manage them. That's natural, but you cannot really manage independent, economically grihastas in your community. That's failure. You cannot do that. So you need to provide spiritual, emotional, and social care for them. And don't mix funds of ISKCON, meaning of temple, legal ISKCON, and funds of individuals. It should be strictly separately. Never mix property and finances, and just care for people. And don't become business enterprise. ISKCON should not become business enterprise. Otherwise, then you have mixture of interests, conflict of interests, and you become like competitor in a business world with your own people. You become trading with them, bartering with them, which is not good. Brahmanical influence should come from ISKCON, not so much managerial for grihastas. And then if you as a leaders, ISKCON leaders, if you're pure enough, then you just care for people, and you don't need to make money. No need for ISKCON to make money, because there is abundance of money in the world, including our communities. No problem. We need trusted leadership, and people will come and they'll surrender and they will donate too. They will take responsibility for projects, and they will invest their money, donate their money for these projects. No problem with that.
Yes, it's a wonderful paradigm. The idea that trusting and offering that Brahminical presence naturally allows other people to play their role within the society. And then you're pointing to that natural, the ISKCON element is meant to be that Brahminical element. The land, land and working the land, etc., it's one of those economic engines. And Srila Prabhupada spoke to it being a part of our society, wanting to see that happening for our communities. So how has that been navigated within the business development there in Ukraine? That ISKCON properties or ISKCON, one of the charges is to take care of the cows, maintain land, but then naturally the people doing that need to be economically provided for also. So how do you guys navigate that dynamic?
You see, we have a resolution on National Council of the National Council local that on this topic, that ISKCON, I mean legal ISKCON, not ISKCON members, because all Grihastas, they ISKCON, definitely ISKCON people, but legal ISKCON cannot even start cow protection without official sanction, official resolution of National Council. And what we trying to do, we want independent grihastas have their cows, have their land, produce grains and vegetables and everything, and we just providing guidance for that.
Mm.
And they become successful business people. What's the problem? And we which you should try lead simple life, like Prabhupada. I was listening to Prabhupada's tape, and he is speaking about case a few hundred years ago in Krishna Nagar near Mayapur. And he said that there was a Raja, Krishna Chandra, and there was a pure but poor Brahmana there, and he came to this Brahmana, king came to Brahmana and said, "What can I do for you?" And Brahmana said, "I don't need anything from you. I have my students, and they bring in some little rice, and my wife ripping leaves from tamarind tree and making some chutney. And I'm happy with that." And Prabhupada was glorifying that example of Brahmanical life. Brahmana mean he should not become a Vaishya. And rural communities and activity mean and imply trading, making profits, etc. As ISKCON leaders, we should not be involved in that. Let private personalities do that. And of course, ISKCON should have ownership of the temple and deities. That's another thing. But that's it. But people come in and they offer everything. What's the problem? So business is not our job. Basically, it's not our job. We're not business consultant. We can care spiritually for these people, definitely. We can coach their life according to spiritual principles, but we're not involved in material thing.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation, because the ethic in Eastern Europe and the ethic in North America, very different dynamic. I would, yeah, I'm loving what you're putting down, and we can see the fruit of it also. We can see that the result is there in the Ukrainian. I was mentioning beforehand, we were discussing about the Ukrainian festival and how many devotees come, and many of us across the world have seen the success of that. And it's understood to be a free festival, but you corrected me that it's not free. It's just expected that everybody who comes contributes what they're able to. And in just allowing that contribution to come from the heart, enough is there to create an incredible program over almost a week's time with 12,000 plus devotees.
You see, the point is that we need, if we are leaders, as leaders, we need to create a situation to put these people in front of God, and we should be transparent. We should not be interested in money And we should just create a situation and tell people that's your responsibility between you and God. And you decide how much you want to do, how much you want to donate or not. This is between you and God. And then they take in responsibility, and they feel this is their project between them and God, which is beautiful. It's very inspiring.
Yes. I'm feeling excited myself. Thank you for that example, and for it. It's not something theoretical. It's clearly something that you're living there in Ukraine. So well, maybe you can share also around this dynamic of offering guidance. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in devotees who want to live that more rural, simple life away from the urban environment? What are things that come up for them that maybe they didn't expect, and you as a counselor have had to help guide them through in their development?
The most common problem I see that they they settle themselves very far away, and they're losing connection with the thriving spiritually society of devotees. And they're like in Vaishnava Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, and they starving spiritually, and they just working very hard from the very early morning to late night. Working, and not because there is a demand. Demand always will be there to work hard, but they losing, focus, spiritual focus in their lives. That's most of the problem. Any devotee, be it brahmachari, grihastha, living in a city, living in a village, need strong sadhana and sadhu sangha. It's not that sadhana is just for brahmacharis and others would come back to Godhead without sadhana. It's not. It's the same for everybody. What we preaching to them, then they must need strict sadhana, 16 rounds in the morning, daily reading, at least 1 hour reading of books, Prabhupada's books, and daily kirtan, chanting together, coming together and chant. And then it solves problem. Otherwise, most common problem that they becoming spiritually weak.
It sounds like helpful to have the Vaishnava Sangha if they're able to maintain those principles of sadhana. Even if they're alone or a few devotees, then they're able to stay strong.
They will stay strong, and by a nice atmosphere, they will attract others. With their accent on spiritual values, they will attract others. Otherwise, people would flee from that community.
Wonderful. Yeah, simple for the simple. So and you've touched on some of this already, the development of this sense of an invested idea of community, where it's many people having a sense of responsibility rather than just one or two people who are taking on all of the service and kind of vision, leadership, etc. How to create that invested sense amongst all the community members?
You see, the main thing, one of the other main things, but also very valid, is that we have to grow leaders, responsible people. And if you're creating a network of groups of spiritual care, you empower people who incline to do that to become leaders, even small leaders. Let them care for 3-5 people. That's okay. But they moving up to a different category. From the person who receiving care, they immediately move into the category of giving care, of caring for others, and they growing. And they becoming very responsible people who capable of taking some responsibility, co-ownership, as you said, of community, because they caring for some people, and community means people. They on that page, on the same page as you preaching. They become your co-workers easily because you entrusted them such a noble mission.
So is there training provided for those who are offering that kind of care, or is it simply just to ask them?
Of course, yes. We have meeting in Kiev. We have every 2 weeks we have meeting of counselors, of Namhata leaders, and it's a very nice meeting for, let's say, 120, 150 devotees, because group leaders means usually grihasta, husband and wife together, and we insist they come together. We have a lot of programs for ladies, especially to care for them, and by senior ladies, and yeah, you invest a lot in training them, definitely.
Is there any online resource you could maybe point the devotees watching to see some of this care in action, or some of the training material?
We have Vaishnava Seva site, but it's all in Russian. Sorry.
Okay. To crack the code, we have to learn the Russian language. I think that everyone dropped Sanskrit, turn to Russian studies. Okay. How about you used this word network earlier. How to design a kind of network? What's the ethic of network in the community, so that you have that sense of common purpose, and at the same time, devotees still have a sense of autonomy? You know, they're not a part of a cult. There's not this overbearing influence in their life. There's that individual satisfaction within a sense of common purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for a good question. You see that our agenda not to just create another program. Our agenda to change a culture, to promote culture of care. It's not a program. And in such care culture of care, you see devotees in terms that they become an object of your service. We pushing very much Vaishnava Seva principles, and they become an object of your service, and through them, because our philosophy to become dasa anudasa, you serving through them, you're serving to Krishna, through Krishna's devotees, spiritually, socially, emotionally. Financially, they have to support themselves, of course, although in some extreme cases you can have fund for health emergency, etc. But we promoting this culture of care for individuals, and then missionary spirit and the needs of individuals becoming balanced. And you, because your mission becoming more or less caring for individuals, and then quality of relationships, quality of atmosphere in community attracts quantity, and you grow, because we all ISKCON devotees, we all know what's going on in our movement everywhere, and we have no problems attracting people. We're very extravagant, we're very bright, we very enlivened, we have blissful practices, we have fantastic prasadam, everything, you know, clothes, everything we have, DT program, but we cannot keep people. That's a greatest challenge. But when you growing organically, because we are into organic, right?
Yeah, Fair trade, organic.
Yeah, when you're growing in your community organically, we're caring for people, and you're building up quantity, a number of projects in a very natural way. Very natural, and if people getting burned out, you preaching them, just slow down, keep up with your sadhana, don't become too passionate. So it's becoming, all those managers, we have them, they are also counselor, but better not to become manager for your counselees. And then they have two roles, counselor and manager. They're more on counselor role because it's sweeter than management, and it's becoming such a blissful program. And individuals' interests also met. That's a balance.
I love what you said, that when this common sense of purpose is care for the individual, then you don't have to worry about that overbearing institutional influence.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So just kind of, we're coming up to the close of the conversation.
Yeah.
This idea of intentional communities, it's very popular around the globe, even with, outside of our own Vaishnav community. People are recognizing the dangers of the modern world and this isolationist culture, how to come closer together. What would you say to devotees who aspire to have that kind of experience of community? Where can they start?
First of all, I want to ask their blessings to be always a servant of Srila Prabhupada through his representatives, Vaishnavas.
Jai.
And I wish to all the devotees to be always focused on spiritual life, their individual spiritual sadhana and practice, simple village life according to Prabhupada's vision meant for building independent material existence with the goal of surrendering to Krishna and chanting. So let us not forget this goal in organizing our material life in rural setting. And also, actually, I'd like to mention something, that cooperation in development rural projects, cooperation with the Ministry of Agriculture and Crop Protection was very successful, very fruitful. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Jai Kalakanta Prabhu and all his servants. I'm just an interviewer trying to do some offer my appreciation for their work also. Maybe you can describe for us what exactly was the ministry able to help with and support you through?
First of all, this wonderful ministry introducing these wonderful rules, guidelines for cow protection, to have safe cow protection projects. And in general, Kalakanta Prabhu was a few times in Ukraine, and he was even traveling through rural projects and dealing with the leaders of those projects. And we really need input from global level, from GBC level, to have successful and sustainable development of this, agricultural and cow protection mission. So, yeah, people need to hear, because when it comes only through local level, sometimes we heard that. But when it comes from superior level, and it's very thoughtful and thought well, principles of development that really valued and accepted.
Wonderful encouragement and endorsement of the Iscon Ministry for Cow Protection and Agriculture, which is the page which we're coming live with you today. Acyuta Pryia, thank you so much. It's been a beautiful session hearing about the success of the community spirit there in the Ukraine Yatra, being centered in Vaishnav Seva and sadhana, and how focusing on those things, then naturally all the other so-called problems harmonize around that. Would you have any parting words for us, Prabhu? Any last pieces of encouragement or advice?
I think that's it. A lot of details, but Zoom session doesn't allow to share everything. And anyways, if there are any more questions, I'm open to personal contact.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you for coming. Thank you to all our viewers. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We hope to bring you many more interviews like this in the future. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.